I've rewritten this story in my head 1,000 times, trying to figure out where it actually started. Most people would say it began the night of the fire. That's the version the police went with. That's the version everyone still believes. But it didn't start there. It started months earlier, with a job I hated, a boss I trusted too much, and a mistake that wasn't even mine. My name's William. I'm not a good person, but I'm not the monster people think I am either. That's probably what everyone says, right? Still, I need to get this out somewhere, even if it's just strangers scrolling past at 2 a.m. The official story is simple. I burned down a storage facility to cover up financial fraud I committed. That's what they proved in court. That's what's on record. The truth is a lot messier. I didn't start the fraud. I didn't even know about it at first. But I did light the match. And that's the part one can't undo. I worked as an operations coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company. Nothing glamorous, spreadsheets, inventory logs, shipment tracking. The kind of job where mistakes are usually boring, not life-altering. My boss, Daniel, was the kind of guy everyone trusted. Calm, organized, always had an answer ready. He hired me personally, said he liked my attention to detail. At the time, I thought that was a compliment. Looking back, it feels more like selection criteria. The first time I noticed something off, it was small. A discrepancy in outgoing inventory, a shipment logged as sent but never actually processed through the system. I assumed it was a clerical error. It happens. But then I found another. And another. At first, I did what you're supposed to do, flagged it, documented it, sent emails. Daniel always brushed it off. System lag. Supplier misreporting. I'll handle it. I wanted to believe him. It was easier that way. But the numbers kept getting worse. And eventually, I realized something uncomfortable. These weren't mistakes. They were patterns. Once you see a pattern, you can't unsee it. That's the problem. I started staying late, telling myself I was just being thorough. Really, I was digging. Cross-checking shipment IDs against warehouse logs, comparing timestamps, tracing approvals. It wasn't exciting, just hours of quiet clicking and a growing sense that something was very wrong. The missing inventory always followed the same path. Logged, approved, and then, gone. No exit scans. No delivery confirmation. Just a clean digital trail that ended exactly where Daniel's authorization appeared. I told myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe a system glitch tied to his credentials. Maybe someone else using his login. I wasn't ready to accept what it actually looked like. So I printed everything. Dates, amounts, signatures. Built a timeline like something out of a crime show, except it was my job on the line. That's when I made my first real mistake. I decided to confront him directly. I didn't plan the confrontation well. No strategy, no backup, just me, a folder full of printed logs, and this stubborn belief that if I showed Daniel the evidence, he'd either explain it or fix it. I caught him late in the evening. Office mostly empty, lights dimmed, that end-of-day quiet settling in. I remember thinking it was the perfect time. No interruptions. I was wrong. At first, he didn't even look concerned. He flipped through the papers slowly, nodding like I just handed him routine reports. Then he smiled, not nervous, not angry. Just calm. "That's good work, William," he said. That should have been my warning. He didn't deny anything. Didn't panic. Instead, he started explaining, not what was happening, but why it wasn't a problem. Talking about accounting gaps, insurance coverage, temporary adjustments. The kind of vague corporate language that sounds official but means nothing. I pushed back. Harder than I should have. And that's when the tone changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to realize I'd crossed a line I didn't understand yet. Daniel didn't threaten me. That's what made it worse. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and spoke like we were discussing a promotion, not missing inventory worth more than I'd make in 10 years. He said the company was flexible in how it handled losses. That sometimes things needed to move quietly to keep bigger contracts stable. That people who understood that tended to do well. Then he slid one of my printed reports back toward me. "You're already part of this, William," he said. "You found it. You documented it. That connects you?" I remember laughing. Actually laughing. It sounded ridiculous at first, like he was trying to scare me with something flimsy. But then he pointed out the timestamps. My login attached to the audit pulls. My name on the internal flags. Emails sent from my account raising concerns that, if reframed, could look like controlled adjustments. He didn't need to accuse me. He just needed to show me how easily someone else could. I didn't agree to anything that night. At least, that's what I told myself. I walked out of his office with the folder under my arm and this heavy, buzzing feeling in my chest, like I'd just stepped into something deep without realizing how far down it went. I kept replaying the conversation, trying to pick it apart, find the moment where I still had control. The truth? I was already compromised. Over the next few days, I stopped sending emails about discrepancies. Stopped flagging issues. Instead, I started reviewing them quietly. Watching how entries moved. Learning the system the way Daniel seemed to understand it. I convinced myself I was gathering evidence. That I'd go to someone higher up once I had everything airtight. That I'd expose him properly. But that's not what I was doing. I was adapting. Every time I chose not to report something, it got easier. Every time I rationalized it, just one more day, just one more detail, I moved a little further away from being innocent. And closer to being involved. About 3 weeks later, Daniel called me into his office again. This time, it wasn't subtle. He closed the door, didn't bother with small talk, and got straight to it. There was going to be an audit. External. Serious. The kind that doesn't just skim numbers but digs into them. And suddenly, everything clicked. All those missing shipments, the clean digital trails, the approvals, it wasn't just quiet manipulation anymore. It was a ticking clock. And Daniel knew it. "That facility on the east side," he said, almost casually. "Old storage. Mostly inactive inventory." I knew the place. Half forgotten, barely maintained, full of records no one had touched in months. He didn't say burn it down. Not directly. He talked about risk elimination. About unrecoverable documentation. About how sometimes systems fail in ways no one can predict. Then he looked at me. "You understand how things connect now, William." That was the moment I should have walked away. Reported everything. Taken the hit, whatever it was. Instead, I nodded. And just like that, the plan became real. The scariest part isn't when someone pressures you into something. It's when you stop needing the pressure. After that meeting, Daniel barely said anything else about it. No instructions, no follow-ups. Just silence. Like he trusted me to figure it out. And I did. I told myself I wasn't planning a crime, I was containing damage. That phrase stuck in my head because it sounded clean, almost responsible. Like I was fixing a problem instead of creating one. I started visiting the East Side facility under normal pretenses. Inventory checks, system verification. No one questioned it. I'd been thorough for months, after all. I memorized the layout. Entrances, camera placements, blind spots. Not perfectly, just enough to feel confident. I noted which areas had older wiring, where flammable materials were stacked, how long it took for the night shift to rotate. I even researched how fires spread in storage environments. Not in a dramatic way. Quietly. Late at night. Like it was just curiosity. At some point, I stopped thinking if I'd do it. And started thinking how to do it cleanly. The night I chose didn't feel significant enough. No storm, no dramatic tension, just a quiet weekday. The kind of night where nothing memorable is supposed to happen. I figured that made it safer. Less attention, fewer variables. I told myself this was the last chance to back out. I even sat in my car for almost 20 minutes outside the facility, engine off, just listening to the ticking sound as it cooled. I remember thinking, if I leave now, none of this has to happen. But I didn't leave. Getting inside was easier than it should have been. I had legitimate access, after all. Badge swipe, a quick glance at the empty lot, and I was in. The building smelled like dust and old cardboard, dry, stale, almost waiting for something to happen to it. My hands weren't shaking like I expected. That surprised me. I felt focused. Narrow. Like everything unnecessary had dropped away. I moved exactly how I'd planned. At least, that's what I thought. I started in the section with the oldest stock, boxes of outdated records, brittle packaging, things no one would miss immediately. I'd brought what I needed, nothing dramatic, just enough to make sure it would catch and spread. For a few minutes, everything felt controlled. Too controlled. Then I heard something. Not loud. Just a shift, like a door or a cart being moved somewhere deeper in the building. My whole body locked up. I stood there, barely breathing, listening hard enough that my ears started ringing. The schedule said no one should be there. That was my first real crack. I told myself it was nothing. Building settling. Air systems. Anything but a person. Because if it was someone, then this wasn't just about documents anymore. I should have stopped right there. Instead, I rushed. I lit it faster than I planned, skipped steps, didn't double-check anything. The small flame caught, flickering weak at first, then stronger, feeding on dry material like it had been waiting. And suddenly it was real. Too real to undo. I was halfway to the exit when I heard it again, clearer this time. Footsteps. Not imagined. Not the building settling. Actual, uneven footsteps echoing through the aisles. Everything in me dropped. I turned back without thinking, heart slamming so hard it made my vision pulse. The fire was already growing behind me, low but spreading, licking up the sides of stacked boxes. And then I saw him. One of the night maintenance guys, Pavel, I think his name was. Older, quiet, the kind of person you barely notice until a moment like that burns them into your memory forever. He looked confused at first, then alarmed. His eyes flicked from me to the fire, trying to make sense of both at once. William? What? I didn't let him finish. I said something about an electrical issue, told him to get out, to call it in. I don't even remember the exact words, just the urgency, how fast they came out. For a second, he hesitated. And that second felt like it would decide everything. Pavel finally moved. Turned and started heading toward the exit, faster now, glancing back once like he still didn't fully understand what he'd walked into. I followed a few steps behind, but the fire was already changing shape. What had started as something contained was spreading unevenly, climbing faster in some sections, choking others with thick, dark smoke. That's the thing no one tells you. Once it starts, it doesn't follow your logic. The alarms kicked in late. Too late. A harsh, broken sound cutting through the building as the smoke thickened. My eyes were burning, throat tightening, every breath starting to feel like a mistake. For a second, I thought Pavel had gotten out. Then I heard coughing, not ahead of me, but somewhere off to the side. He'd taken a wrong turn. I froze. Every instinct told me to go help him. That this was the line, the one thing that would decide whether I was just someone who made a terrible choice, or something worse. And I hesitated. Just long enough for the situation to get out of control. I wish I could say I ran toward him. That some last piece of decency kicked in and overrode everything else. That I turned back into the smoke, found Pavel, and dragged him out like something out of a redemption story. I didn't. I stood there, half-blinded, lungs burning, listening to him cough somewhere in that maze of shelves. And all I could think about was what would happen if I got caught inside with him. Two people. One fire. questions I couldn't answer. Fear doesn't feel dramatic when it takes over. It feels practical. Cold. Efficient. I told myself he knew the building. That he'd find his way out. That going after him would just make things worse. So I moved toward the exit. Each step felt heavier than the last, like my body knew what I was doing even if my mind kept justifying it. By the time I reached the door, the alarms were screaming, and the smoke was swallowing everything behind me, including him. And I didn't go back. By the time the fire was under control, the narrative had already started forming, not from me, but around me. Pavel didn't make it out. They found him later, deeper in the building than he should have been. Smoke inhalation, they said. Trapped, disoriented. A tragic accident tied to a facility that clearly had safety issues. And then came the investigation. At first, I thought Daniel would handle it. That this was the part where everything we'd implicitly agreed to would keep me safe. Instead, he stepped back. Subtly. Cleanly. Records started surfacing. My access logs, my late-night visits, the audit trails with my name all over them. Emails I'd written, concerns I'd raised, reframed to look like someone trying to cover their own tracks. It was almost impressive. The more I tried to explain, the worse it sounded. Like I was building excuses in real time. Daniel, meanwhile, cooperated fully. Calm. Helpful. Untouched. I realized too late what he'd done. He didn't just plan for the fire. He planned for someone to take the fall. I was convicted. Arson, negligence leading to death, fraud-related charges layered on top like they needed to make absolutely sure I never walked away from it. My lawyer tried to argue coercion, manipulation, and maybe there was some of that. But none of it erased the one thing that mattered. I went there. I planned it. I started the fire. And when it mattered most, I chose myself over someone else's life. Daniel never faced charges. Not enough evidence, they said. Not enough to tie him directly to intent. He moved on. Different company, same calm smile, I'd imagine. As for me, I've had a lot of time to think. Here's the part no one wants to hear. There isn't always a clean line between being set up and being guilty. Sometimes you step over it one small decision at a time until you're too far in to pretend you didn't walk there yourself. If you ever find yourself in something that feels manageable, something you think you can control, don't leave early. Speak up sooner. Take the consequences before they grow teeth. Because once they do, they don't just bite. They consume everything.